Is it truly possible to connect with your audience and build loyalty in times of AI everything? Today, we're chatting with Javier Baxter Aceves, a content and marketing pro who's worked as editor-in-chief at BuzzFeed, manager of brand and editorial marketing at Netflix, and director of content acquisition at Script. In the first half of our conversation, Baxter will share tips about how BuzzFeed and Netflix found and connected their audiences in their early days. But stay tuned, because the second half is where things get really interesting. We talk about AI in content creation, how to cut through the noise tsunami of terrible AI content that is flooding the internet, and how to still find the others, find that connection with humans, build that community. Be sure to watch this episode all the way and let me know in the comments what you thought of it. I'm really interested to see how this conversation resonates with all of you.
There's this sort of nostalgia that I feel we all feel for the old internet, the way where, folks talk about commercial aviation in the 60s, like you would have leg room and you would have like silverware, and we had GeoCities and BuzzFeed, right? So you help shape the narrative for one of the most important like media pages that basically changed the way we consume content, right? In a way. How did you get there?
Yeah, that was a while after I started my professional career. First, I ventured into magazines and advertising agencies and jumping back and forth and doing freelance work and always writing and always doing. And when they decided to open an office in BuzzFeed, I guess I was in the right moment at the right time. I was writing a novel back then. I was currently just freelancing, no stable income. And honestly, I wasn't a fan of BuzzFeed back in the day, but Cons, who became my boss, like she knew someone that knew me, and I got recommended to her. So that's how it yeah, that's how it happened. I like, it wasn't my dream to become the editor for BuzzFeed or anything like that. But I started a conversation about the internet with her, and instead of an interview, it was more, just like what we're having right now. We're talking about the old days of internet. We're talking about content. We're talking about what makes people share. We're talking about the future of media back in the day. And this sounds like this was 2015. This wasn't like not even 10 years ago. And I remember that we were saying that newspapers were dying, and we talked about the New York Times. Like, we were so wrong, but that BuzzFeed was becoming more relevant among our generation than the New York Times and the Washington Post, and that was the future. And there was this moment in life where that seemed to be true, and that's like, I think what you're referring to as the golden age, because it's that moment where the internet was not that infested with political agendas, with trolls, with bots, with all of these like control mechanisms, and of course the full potential of the commercial mindset that social media has wasn't like not even at its like half of its capacity. So it was truly a place to connect with people. And I've always looked at the internet as that, like as a refuge from the real world, and as a refuge to find people with similar um, interests and similar points of view, and just to share music, share memes, share funny stuff, download movies that you weren't able to see back in your country, in Mexico, where I'm from.
Don't say anything.
No. I'm just saying, like, yeah, there were a lot of resources. So that's the common thread that I had with BuzzFeed, which was how to make people join into a sharing and a positive sharing cycle, which is a conversation between a medium and its audience, and how to crack why people share and how people share. So it was a very bad business because it didn't have a defined business model. It was native advertising, and that's where all their eggs were. Like that basket was it. And
2014, 2015, everything's gonna be paid by
yeah,
ads.
native advertising. And my job basically was to make people have fun in the internet or make people interested. So we started experimenting with a lot of things that were already successful at BuzzFeed. You know, those quizzes like, we'll tell you which state you actually belong in. Well, we translated that to Mexican audiences and then to Latin American audiences. We created a version of Tasty, but for Latin American audiences. We created a version of BuzzFeed News based on with the very limited resources that we had, based on what we thought was missing in the news landscape back in the day, like in 2016, 2017, with the election coming up and the World Cup coming up. So there were like a lot of things that were happening that were really interesting and that the media was ignoring, such as how memes work, how politicians are using social networks, how the World Cup is now broadcasted through Twitter or through Instagram. So we covered those events in from that angle and with a very local approach, but a global mindset. So that was a really interesting moment of my life, but also of life in media, and a very transformative one. I would say the end of the dream. 2016, Donald Trump wins the presidency. Everyone points at Facebook and all that horrible and nasty targeting they did to spread fake news. And then they decided to shut down everything news related, everything content related. Links, like seeing links right now in social media, that's something that doesn't happen, for example. So traffic went down in all of the sites, and all of those sites needed to either adapt or die. And you can see like sites like Gawker, like Vice, like BuzzFeed, they're not the same because they needed to transform their business model and their mindset against content and against how people spend their attention and why do they spend their attention on them.
I want to talk a little bit about Netflix. How do you make that jump?
Entertainment is leading, and especially digital subscription platforms are leading the way on how people are consuming content right now. So my job there was to understand the different types of audiences and work with the rest of the marketing team to understand what was the market segmentation for a show or a film, and how to tap on the main themes of each of the shows, how to be as loosely coupled as that's Netflix jargon, like loosely coupled from the marketing campaigns, but at the same time being able to engage and to create some excitement and some conversation about Netflix when people weren't watching Netflix. So that was basically the mantra. It's like, how do you make people talk about Netflix when they're not watching Netflix?
Can you still apply those same techniques or secret sauce you were using to stay on top of trends today?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Honestly, I think it's going faster than we can handle. And trends are getting atomized in a very fast and vertiginous way, because the algorithms are getting way better at segmenting and targeting the content, and that's just going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know if it's going to get better, but it's going to get more and more specialized. Right now, the way that the algorithms are trained, that's kind of like the new Coca-Cola recipe, right? Like, how do you crack TikTok? How do you crack Instagram's algorithm? How do you crack LinkedIn? And how do you make how do you trick a robot that does not have any sense of rationality, that does not make decisions based on any type of emotion? How do you crack the way it works? And how do you get to most people? So, of course, there are trends, and trends are going to exist all of the time. That's what ties us together. That's what makes us part of a society. And it's not trends; it's culture. It's more than that. A trend could be easily misidentified as a fad or as something that happens really quickly. But there's overarching themes and there's overarching ideas that are lingering in the in the common subconscious that are still there. And that's what I like about what I do right now, which is I am not 25 years old anymore. I do not know the ultimate trend in TikTok. I don't know who the best influencer is. Honestly, I don't care. I'm beyond that, But
Isn't
from
it beautiful? Sorry to interrupt, but isn't it beautiful when you're like, I don't care anymore?
of course, and it's natural. I was like that when I was 25. Yeah, I could tell you like who was the hottest band or who was the like the what was the best show that wasn't airing in local TV, and what were the best YouTube channels to follow. Yes, right now I don't have the time to do it, and I'm not the target audience for that. I'm not the persona or whatever, but I am aware of several things happening, and my job right now is to thread those ideas into like a broader user or cultural behavior in order to be creative about how to speak about X or Y thing to a certain audience through a certain medium. My current job is leading the Spanish speaking content strategy for an ebook and audiobook company. And books are quite something. Like it's a commitment. It's not like watching a 35-minute documentary on YouTube or an 8-hour series on Netflix. It's devoting your attention to listening or reading to something. And that may be from 2 to 16 hours, and that's not necessarily ingrained in our entertainment consumption routine. So we need to understand why people, like, for example, in my job, is why people subscribe to our service. And then from those people that are subscribing, what's their intention? What do they need to get from that? Like, what's the job that we're doing from them? And what's the job that a book or an audiobook is doing for them? And maybe it's entertainment. Maybe it's a romance novel. Maybe it's a poetry book and they want inspiration or they want to escape, but maybe they want to grow, or maybe they want to understand about AIs, or maybe they want to understand why they're being dicks to their kids, and why they're being irritable after the pandemic and with the world as it is, with war and impending economic crisis knocking at the door all the time, and how they're reacting emotionally to that. So those are things that are happening right now in the world. And the way that you treat people's attention is ultimately what's going to make the difference. You can ask a chatbot to create whatever type of content or whatever type of video. You can ask AI to bring in the content, But if there's no intention behind it, if there's no understanding of what's the conversation, what are my current drivers, what's worrying me in the world, what makes me feel insecure, what makes me feel comfortable, if I'm not understanding that, which is a level of humanity, I'm lost at what I'm doing. So yeah, to answer your questions, I don't know what the latest trend is. I don't know who the what Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner did yesterday, I don't mind. I don't care.
You're still dating yourself because probably like 20 years old probably do not care.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they care about, but they probably don't care about the Kardashians. Or maybe they do. I don't know.
But I do know that people want to connect. I do know that people have aspirations. I do know that people want to have a better job, a better life, a better salary, a better peace of mind. I know that people want to travel. I know that people want to try new food. You know, it's not rocket science. What's interesting is the way that you create a piece of entertainment that satisfies those needs. And that's the interesting part. That's the thing that's always changing. That's the language that's evolving. And I think that could be learned very easily and mastered if you're not catching the algorithm, but if you're catching people's if you're not trying to catch the algorithm, but if you're trying to catch people's actual feelings and people's actual desires. So I think that's a challenge right now.
Right now, right, you're the director of content for Script, a podcast audio company, and you're in charge of content acquisition for Spain, Latin America, Brazil, right? And there's something I was actually reading this article, which is called Here Lies the Internet, Murdered by Generative AI, a title that is as dramatic as amazing. I'm kind of jealous. Eric Hoel is the writer. And I'll put the link on the description, podcast notes, video, etc., for those that want to read it. But basically, what it positions, it's we're due for a tsunami of trash, fast content polluting everything. Like the internet as we know it will be a memory because it's already happening. And I think it's only going to escalate, which we're going to get a lot of trash AI-generated content. We see it on Reddit with those videos that are basically narrating a Reddit thread with an AI voice, So I'm assuming as someone that is working on content acquisition, in which literally your job, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're literally keeping an eye on the content that's around, trying to build new content to get people's attention. And I don't have an answer for this. I've been spending actually sleepless nights thinking about the future of content and, the future of attention and whether there will be any attention at all. What's your theory, Baxter?
Do you want the optimistic answer or do you want the pessimistic answer?
I mean,
Okay.
surprise me.
Okay, here's the two scenarios. I'm gonna start with the pessimistic one. Have you ever heard have you ever watched Idiocracy, that 2000s movie by Mike Judge?
Of course.
I think there's a lot of parallels between Idiocracy and the reality that we're facing right now, which is people not being able to understand the difference between real and not real, between fake and fact, between garbage and healthy, and with the rise of Gen AI, it's really easy for ill-intentioned people to take advantage of that. We saw that in 2016. We saw that with the election in Brazil with Bolsonaro. We saw that, well, we're seeing that across the world with very obscure powers taking advantage.
Yeah. That happened in my home country, actually.
Yeah.
People are.
Yeah. I didn't want to mention Milei, but that's people taking advantage of the cracks in the wall. Like, oh, there's an error here. There's an area of opportunity here, and we can use these tools to make money, to gain power, to create chaos, to divide people, to create war. And that's when I said, like, it's not gonna get better before it's not gonna get better before it gets better. And I do think that that's gonna be one big challenge with media professionals, with some sort of principles, with people that actually watch and observe democratic processes, we need to be aware of the capabilities of this. And yeah, there's going to be a tsunami. There's going to be a lot of trash around, but I really think there's an opportunity on scraping that trash and bringing out what's actually valuable, what's actually interesting, what's actually worth towards a better world and a better society. That's a pessimistic one. The
Mm-hmm.
optimistic one, I think this is a time for a renaissance, you know? Like this is a time for uh people to educate those algorithms, to educate those AIs, to actually have these debates because we have the tools. We have the like we're doing a podcast right now. I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, but it's certainly more than the people that would have listened to 20 years ago. So you have that opportunity as well. And having those tools, having those like bits of technology that will help you do your work easier, faster, and more at scale can help things get better a little bit into how all of this, as you call it, all of this like tsunami of trash content is going on. So there's another side of it, and I'd rather be a glass half full type of person that thinks that there's always been bad people, there's always been bad intentions, and people trying to profit and people trying to take advantage of the situations, regardless of people's livelihoods and people's um, well-being. But I think that they're outnumbered by the people who want a better world and people who want to make the difference. So I think that initiatives like yours, for example, like let's take the veil of the AI world and the trends and the fads and the conversation. Let's stop being afraid of it. Let's stop being suspicious of it, and let's talk about this. Let's create agency from it. Let's become more human uh, in a way that technology brings us together and doesn't brings us apart. You know, so trash can bring us apart, but trash can bring us also together.
That's a beautiful message. That's a beautiful message. Like, trash can give bring us together. But I think you got a point, and if I can interrupt for a minute, as I think about AI, as you said, running a podcast in which basically we talk about the intersection of human creativity, AI, and how it affects the work we do today, but also the bigger picture impact of how it affects culture and how it affects us as people who make a living out of creativity, right? Because it's a true worry of mine. I started actually, it was like 10 best prompts, the 10 best prompts to like, I don't know, do whatever. And a year later, I'm talking like it's AI gonna kill us all. So obviously it's been a journey, right? But today I was actually having this thought, as we were saying, we'll think of the old school internet as we do about commercial aviation in the 60s. But also I think because you would say, yeah, we fix this by having education and good legislation. But education is not in the interest of politicians, and good legislation, they would have to understand the internet, which they don't because they are 100 years old. And nothing wrong with age, but certain policies, you need to be a little bit more attuned to what's going on, right? So my hope is that us humans, through history, we love being told what to do. We actually love it when someone makes decisions for us, up to a certain point. And I do think eventually we'll have a backlash in which humanity, because of its rebellious nature, it's going to go back, the same way that we scream at the phone, give me with a human when we're calling customer service. It's going to be the same scream about content. And maybe that means that we will not have gigantic, all-encompassing content, the way we had megabands in the 90s. That doesn't exist anymore. Maybe Taylor Swift is the last of a dying breed, but other than that, there's nothing that it's 100% massive. So I do think a future in which we'll be proving this is human-made by owning mistakes, by literally being as raw as possible, because we'll be tired of slick things again, people will also have a lot of tolerance for that. So that's here to stay. It's not like people will be like F AI, and we will all make money. No, there will be less jobs. There will be a lot of shit content, a lot of content, but also there will be this need for community that I think we'll never lose, because at the end of the day, we're animals trying to like prolong the species. And that's all. So I don't know if it's illusion, if it's something that might happen. I don't know, man.
I was really inspired by this book called Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff. He's a media theorist, and he's, I think, one of the most interesting voices right now to pay attention to what's happening in the intersect of wealth, technology, and communications. And he has a podcast called Team Human as well, but this book is kind of like a manifesto where he explains what's going on with technology, how technology has been evolving in a very malicious way to divide people and to make a customizable and personalized experience for everyone. And that's not good for our species because we're social for like we're social by nature. We need communities, we need tribes, we need communication. And what's happening right now, it's um, a systematical divide caused by technology. There's a way out, which is like he mentions, is finding the others, finding other people that are aware of this and trying to like to get the word out and trying to get the word um, on how to sensitize on the attention economy, on how social media and your phone is directly impacting your mental health, how are like some politicians and some people just using this to their own advance. And I think it's important to create some consciousness about it. And step one, two, and three is talk about it, just have a conversation about it and share the fear. So that's why I said the trash can bring you together because there's a lot of fear between that. But if you talk about it, then the fear is gone. And then I realized that you, Juan, and I share similar points of view about things, and maybe we have a conversation instead of just sending TikTok videos because that's the way people interact now. And teaching your kids about it, teaching the algorithms about this, like creating some sort of lobby again towards a better and more humane way of consuming technology. I think the European Union is a little bit more there than in the US and Silicon Valley, but there's initiatives going on. So I think that's a way.
And you talk about education, in a way, when two people like us get together, inevitably, being millennials, like kind of like elder millennials, we are starting to think about the transition and what comes next as we start mentoring people, as we start leading teams, and, among or not, but we do. I'm sure you will agree that we've done more coaching in the last few years than maybe 15 years ago, right? Uh, so I think a lot about the kids because in a way, you and I, we got the chance to see those last big budgets, be first on a lot of things. And I'm sure they'll be first for other things. But like, how do you see the new wave of kids, content creators, creative? Will there be a place for them in the world? Because we did those dumb jobs, right? That AI can do when we were starting. So can anyone think of the children?
Of course, no, and I think the children are doing great. Honestly, yes, of course. There's the stupid dance trends, and there's the stupid Tide Pod challenges, and there's always gonna be a Johnny Knoxville in the for for those who aren't a millennial who watch MTV. That was like the first TikTok, it was just like being stupid in the camera because of being stupid. And there's always going to be something like that. But there's also always going to be someone smart that's going to get to the right eyeballs and that's going to convey the message in the way that's more clear and more accessible for most people. So I don't think I don't think this is a generational problem. I think this is a human problem, which is the more access we have to these technologies, the more at risk we are, but also the more advantage we have. So how do you hack? Like, how do you reverse engineer strategies like of people like Steve Bannon, for example, back in 2016, which was spreading fake news and understanding the vulnerabilities of Facebook. How do you reverse engineer that, and how do you do that for good? To actually talk about how beautiful the world out there is and how we are finishing it in a brain dead mentality of consumption. How do you put the word out that music makes people get together, and how do you get out the word of going back to Mother Nature for answers instead of just like mindlessly pill pop whatever your doctor is prescribing you based on some horrible Washington lobby. So I think that's the way. I think there's a lot of people that are actually doing that, and the big challenge is to reverse engineer that. Like and to use the tools, Gen AI included, to to make a to make the world a better place.
No, but that's a really good framing that actually I'd never thought about, and it's like we have the opportunity of also reverse engineering this. Each generation will have a challenge. Unfortunately, us, all of us right now are here, right? The same way that 50 years ago we had World War II. I mean, we're in my mind's stuck in 2020. Sorry, 2000, both 2020 and 2000. So I still have a hard time understanding we're in 2024.
It's not the 90s anymore.
It's not the 90s anymore, sir. Grandpa, move away. We cover a lot. We cover how media evolved, how society has evolved around media. We cover Gen AI, which can get very gloomy sometimes. And we cover the future. So as we reflect about the future, El Baxter, what makes you passionate to continue creating?
I don't have a magic ball. Every time I've tried to make a prediction, I'm wrong. The capacity of life to surprise us is gigantic. It's way more. It's way bigger than whatever like a mega computer or a super algorithm can actually predict. So I think the future is there, like the future is happening right before us, and it's what we make of it. I would say it's how we be like how we take advantage of our consciousness of being present and of being uh where we are and how we are, and understanding the potential that we have to change our environment. So the future is whatever you want it to be, honestly. There's things that are beyond our control, but also there's a lot of things in our control, even more right now. And I think that it's important to be aware of that, and not to take it for granted.
They say shit times bring the best art.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully we'll get a lot of amazing new art. And yeah, Baxter, where can people learn more about you, the work you do? Is there anything you'd like to promote to this very niche audience of ours?
No, no. I mean, I would say follow me on social media, but you know, I don't. I'm not passionate about social media anymore. So Yeah, you can follow me at Del Baxter. I'm like that everywhere, but I'm very irregular at that. So yeah, that's it.
Do you have any podcast, any show that might be frequently
I do.
shared online?
I do have a show. It's in Spanish for all these Spanish speakers. It's a weekly show with my good friend Leonora Milan from Mexico. It's called Tardes Ya. It streams on YouTube. The name of the channel is Tardes Ya, and it's every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Mexico City time.
Awesome. So we'll add the link to that on the show notes on the YouTube video. And yeah, 30% of our audience actually speaks Spanish. So
That's great.
You guys, gente,
amigo.
you can enjoy El Baxter's podcast. I know I do. So thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation. I do want you to make a commitment. You'll come back.
I'll come back.
Because I feel like we haven't even started talking. So Baxter, thank you so much for taking the time. And for those of you that are listening on Spotify, for those of you that are listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, I don't know if Scribe, I should check. Do you guys have podcasts in there?
We have podcasts. I'll ask them to add your podcast.
Yeah, I'll send you guys the RSS feed. And again, Baxter, thank you so much for joining us. See you all. I love you all. Let's let the trash unite us.
We're only scratching the surface.
We're only scratching the surface, mate. Have a good one.
Amo la creación en mi pantalla, bits y bytes en danza, todo brilla, cada código que escribo canta. Sabor a cumbia. Dices que pierdo tiempo.